And welcome to the Full Advisor Coaching Podcast with your host, Kristin Harad. Kristen, good to be with you again. What do we have on the table for topics for discussion today?
Well, Bill, today we're going to address one of the most common questions that I hear from my clients and from advisors overall, but I've had this come up with almost every client now, so I think this is an important topic. And it's going to be all about repurposing content. Yes, recycling, if you will.
Yeah.
Because, as we've talked about on this program many times, content, thought leadership is a really important part of any marketing effort for RIA leaders or financial advisors. And, it takes a lot of time and energy. You can't, you can try to fake it or cut corners, but ultimately some really good, solid, evergreen content that speaks to the pain points of your target audience can serve you very well, and it takes a while to put together. And so one may ask themselves, wow, you'd think for all that effort, I could get more juice from the squeeze, if you will. So, yes.
I can relate to that. And I mean, we were talking beforehand, I can relate to that because I used to write columns for a website that I worked for. And I also wrote an online column for a couple of years. And I would struggle, one, with coming up with topics. And then two, there would be times when I thought, man, I got a topic and I love it, and I'd write it and it would just lay there and not get the attention that I thought it deserved. And so when I was kicking around ideas for a new topic, I always thought maybe I should go back and look at that one and recycle it, repurpose it, obviously rewrite it. To get a little more, as you put it, a little more juice from that squeeze, because there was something there. It just didn't, and it deserved a revisit.
Yes. And I think a lot of times we get the impression that, I published, let's say you did a really long form, pillar post for your website, and you published it. And therefore you're like, well, I can't publish that again because I've already said it and people already know and they've already seen it. Where I'm like, most people probably haven't seen it yet, unfortunately. And I always feel bad because I know that advisors have put their heart and soul into creating these pieces. And then it really does, as we've talked in other episodes, people have to see your work 7 times across 4 different channels. So we need to take that content and use it in multiple ways. So let's kind of take a look at what that might look like and, just how we might take a piece of content that we have and repurpose it. And then we can kind of get into some of the tools too that we might be able to use or advisors can use in their practice to make it a little easier.
Okay.
So I think one of the biggest things is the concept of evergreen content. So kind of first things first, so many advisors put, their content is pretty much focused on how is the market doing? What is the latest in the market? What's going on? What's the performance? What is a look back to the previous quarter? What are the indicators? What's happened in the economy? And while that is fine content to have published, one, it doesn't make you stand out or separate yourself from anyone else. It's job. If you are publishing it, the job there is simply to remind people that you are experts in this field and that content exists and that, yes, you are aware of what's happening in the economy and what's happening in the market. Right. That's not going to help you necessarily in the marketing side of things, except for kind of table stakes of like, of course, you're going to tell me about the market. It doesn't make you stand out. So we want to have evergreen content that is not, it's not specific to the time of year or the time in history where we are necessarily. It's all around the pain point of your target audience. So what's keeping them up at night? What are they aspiring to? What are the problems that you commonly solve? And this becomes a whole lot easier if you do have a focused target audience a niche, as people like to say.
And you talked about that before.
Yeah,
so.
episode 5 with Kristen Luke. So don't miss that one, folks, if you haven't heard that one. But the good thing is, so if we take something that is evergreen, it can stay relevant for a really long time. And that says, great, which means it's a gold mine for content, right? So you can reshare it, you can update it, you can repurpose it. And so we don't want to waste this content. So for example, let's say that you have, and this is something that I have a number of advisors do for multiple reasons. One, to convey their expertise to their audience, but also to get their messaging down. I ask advisors to create kind of a long form blog post that focuses on the key areas of pain for their audience. So it might be something like 4 strategies to optimize your finances before you file for divorce, or divorcee is a good example. A lot of times I have advisors who are working with business owners. So it's about how to sell a business. And so they talk about the number of, the steps or the content around what you need to do before you exit your business, how to retire comfortably. There's many different things. So whatever your whatever your audience is and that content is around, then we might have a big, long, say 2,000 to even 5,000 word massive blog post, which you may be like, oh my God, that's a lot. So let's say you've developed a long form blog post that's relevant to your target audience. Now, the good thing about that is you have it on your website, and it's exciting because Google and your SEO, it can help your SEO if it's set up properly. People coming to your site can see that that's an area that's really important to you. It also serves to link to other content on your website. So you can have a long form. And then within that, you've likely used a framework to explain a concept. So it might be 4 tips, 5 steps, the 10 things you need to know.
Right.
That's very common. But even if you haven't used that exact type of framework, you are going to have sub-points within that article, right? There's going to be supporting points where you might cover 4 different areas of something. And so this is where the door just swings wide open, right?
Yeah, right.
This is it. You're like, okay, great. I have this, when you write a long form article, even, 1,000 words, 2,000 words, you're looking at the pieces in it and you're like, okay, great. Let me pull out the piece around, how to get a valuation on your business. And that can be its own thing. So what we want to do is sort of break down this long form piece and say, all right, if I had to chop this up and put it into 4 different LinkedIn posts, what would that look like? And so you're going to extract those out and you can make standalone LinkedIn posts. Now, people always go, well, should I link over to the article? What do I do? You can put the link to the article in the LinkedIn post. But what you can do is create a visual that extracts the important elements from the article. You can go into a very easy hack is to take the link of the article, go to ChatGPT and say, I'd like to create 4 LinkedIn posts based on this article. Please break down the content and isolate 4 different points that I can cover. And then you get the drafts back from ChatGPT, and then you read it and fix it because it's not 100% right. And then you look and go, that's not exactly what I meant. But you get it.
Make up some adjustments here.
But the exciting thing is it accelerates your progress there.
Yes.
And then you can also use a tool like Canva, which I know we've talked about before, where you can go in and you just type in LinkedIn post and It'll pull up templates and you can put some of the information in there. Maybe it's a quote from the article. Maybe it's a statistic from the article, and you're going to bring, maybe it's 90% of wealth is gone by the third generation. And you're like, oh, and then you talk about the importance of having, a trust and why it's important to educate the next generation. And so you have your various ideas that come into play there. Another cool way is if, let's say you have that post on like eight tips while you're preparing for divorce, you can go into Canva, put one tip on each visual. So you're going to create a carousel for LinkedIn. So I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it has the slider and it kind of goes,
yes.
It'll go from 1, 2, 3, 4. That is a very cool way to use a framework and break it down into Canva and be like, oh, now I've taken all of this content from the long form and I've put it into short snippets of a visual. You can also, since we're talking about converting to LinkedIn posts, and I'm using LinkedIn post as a proxy for a social media post, depending on whatever platform you like to use or your audience is on. There's another cool tool I tried out while I was preparing for this podcast called text to infographic. And we'll put it in the show notes, but it's just text, the word text, the number 2, infographic. And you can give it the link to the article, and it does work better with shorter articles. So I put in a post that had 8 tips and it only showed me 4 of them. So I think there was a limitation there.
Okay.
But it puts it into an infographic, which is a very cool kind of, longer visual that you can share. You can put it on a website. You could send it out to your audience. You could put it on social. But it was unbelievable how accurate it was in terms of taking the content and saying step 1, step 2, step 3. Unfortunately, it left off 4 of the steps, but the point being,
again, play with these things. I mean, look, you and I've talked about artificial intelligence before and AI. It can be a massive, massive productivity enhancer.
Yes.
It is not, at least not yet, fully reliable. So you have to review stuff. You have to look at stuff. You can't just go brain dead.
Right.
Doing.
And we're going to talk about I know already advisors are probably thinking, oh, this is overwhelming. Oh, and we're going to talk about later, it doesn't have to be you who does this literally, right? So, but I want people to be aware of the tools that are out there.
Yes.
And, another great thing you can do is literally ask ChatGPT, which is what I did. I said, I have a long form blog post. Here it is. What tools can I use to repurpose this content? And so it gave me lists of various things I could do. Another cool thing you can do is to take that same blog post, and I did this for one of my clients because they were asking me about how can we get some video, yet they weren't necessarily ready to step in front of the camera themselves.
Okay.
So I tried out another tool called Pictory, Pictory, I think it is, and we'll put it in the show notes. And you take the URL, you put it in, and it creates a video for you. It uses stock photos. It uses, you can pick your narrator. And I was like, really? It wasn't bad. You can load in a logo. You can even have it create the video, and then you can swap out the stock photos if you're like, oh, that's not quite our target audience or this. And then if you prefer, you can do your own voiceover on it. And it was actually surprisingly simple.
Wow.
And again, you're not getting, it's more of an education video. It's not a get to know the advisor at the firm video because it's, but again, another way to create to take your content and present it in a different way. So very cool. And again, as you alluded to, these tools aren't perfect yet, but I've been trying them out over months now, various tools, and the acceleration to which they are getting better is incredible. So, it's like it's not just try it once and go, well, you know what, it gave me garbage outcome. One, there's probably garbage input, but two, they are learning, which could be scary to some people, but they're getting better at being able to take the information and put it into a form that works for you. And it also, as you work with it, you start to see how to inform it as well to give you what you need.
Yeah. Well, let me pause it for a second, because I'm sitting here thinking maybe you should clarify. You need a purpose, right? When you're refreshing this content, when you're looking at this stuff, it helps. I know you well enough to know that what is unsaid here is that you know what your purpose is, which is it could be anything. It could be re-energizing the content, reinvigorating content for people to engage with. It could be to drive people to your website and engage with you in new different ways that you and reach out to people who've never engaged with you whatsoever, right?
Right. Yeah. So we have, like, for instance, if you have a blog post and people, aren't showing up at your website, then you want to take that content, chop it up and get it out onto social platforms where you might be able to extend the reach. But then you can also kind of bring it down the funnel too, and take your content that you've developed and use it to nurture some prospects. So maybe someone entered your list many months ago, and then you've since published these evergreen blogs, or you've had them in the past, and maybe they hadn't seen those yet. You can turn a series of blogs into a drip campaign. So you may be like, oh, I want to engage my list, engage my audience. What do I do? You're like, well, let's take 4 of the articles that we've put together that are all related themes and send them out in a sequence over time, to your audience. So I think it's really cool because you could, again, if people come in, you have these things, you can reposition the content you have. A lot of people post it on their blog and go, okay, great. They don't even email it out to their list. I'm like, well, at least let them know it's there. But then you can also wrap it up and repurpose it to be a drip campaign, to prompt for, do you want help with this specific problem? Schedule a call. So you can try to move people through.
Am I right here? You're trying to generate new leads. You're not trying to just generate engagement. You're trying to generate new leads for yourself. You're trying to create a magnet for drawing in new prospects, right?
Right. Which actually brings up another good point there's different points because we don't know where in the relationship with you someone is. Like if it's their first awareness, it's like, oh, they've read it. But then maybe they've seen you across multiple channels, and we want to get them in. The ultimate goal on all of this marketing is to get a qualified lead, right?
Yes.
Otherwise we don't care. We don't need to be known and not discovered. We don't need to be discovered, but not having people move through the funnel. Yeah. So another thing you can do is take a number of these blogs and bundle them into a lead magnet or a guide. So let's say you've done a blog series on how to prepare your business before you exit. And so you've done one on valuation, one on looking at what you'll do post retirement. You have another one based on how to find a buyer and getting your books up to date. So you have all these different things. You can bundle them into then the business owner's guide to preparing and exiting your business. And it becomes a downloadable PDF. You have already written the content. You've taken it, then you take all of those articles, and again, here's Canva again. And I'd love to say a different tool, but this one, every time I keep coming back to it, it will take your blogs and you can put them in there and it'll make them into a downloadable guide. It'll turn it into it. Now, it takes a ton of editing at this stage still, but the degree to which you can take that content and make it a guide just by loading it in is, I mean, you are 50% of the way there just by putting it in there. So again, you have to start thinking about, what have I already created? Even if it's a few years old, if it's evergreen, you can bring it forward, repackage it, and bundle it up into one of these, to a lead magnet or a guide.
Now, I don't know if you want to talk about this here, but I feel like you sort of do, because I think a lot of advisors might be listening to you right now, and you mentioned it earlier. I think they may be thinking, this is like way too much. This is a little overwhelming. It sounds like a pretty good, I don't even know how to deal with this. What's your guidance there?
Well, again, it is a lot. And frankly, this is where you need to look at who's on your team, right?
Yes.
So, and I do consider technology to be a strong team member, right? It is, AI is, it's here, it's available, and we can use it to help us. And I encourage every advisor to continue learning about it. However, taking blog posts and putting them into AI and spending time on graphic design tools or tools to get videos, output, or editing, doing voiceovers may not be the highest, best use of your time as the firm leader or as the lead advisor or someone who should be meeting with clients or out networking in the world. So we do want to look and say who on the team has an interest in doing this. So this gets back to that business development ecosystem, and who are the players and where do people have skill and energy and interest. And I'll say I've met a number of sort of admin or support people who find it really interesting and creative to be able to to use a tool like Canva. It's a way, if you're doing a lot of administrative tasks day to day and you're great at that, that's wonderful, but you may want to have a bit of a creative outlet. Yeah. And so I find people I would find people on the team who are like energized or interested in that type of thing. If there's someone in admin role that has excess capacity. But ultimately, it may mean that you're bringing in either a part-time marketing coordinator. That's another element, someone whose job is to take content and repurpose it and get it across different platforms and different formats. Or you can bring someone in from an Upwork platform, a freelancer platform like Upwork or Fiverr. I can't speak to Fiverr. I use Upwork quite regularly. And I have actually just recently done this research to help a client find someone where it's, you go in and you say, I have a wealth of content, and it's all in blog format, and I want to repurpose it into video, to social posts, to other formats. Can you help me? And so, again, you can also ask ChatGPT to write you that job description so you can put it up on Upwork. But the point being, there are people who love doing this and who are really good at it. Yes. And they take the content and they are wizards with it. They know how to use the tools. They know how to get out there and repurpose. So you're getting some of best of both worlds, is that they know how to use the AI tools. They know how to use the graphic design software. They know how to use, the platforms, whether it's Instagram or TikTok or YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook, wherever your audience happens to be. And they get excited about it. So don't leave it to be like, this is something I have to deal with. Your job is to make sure that the thought leadership comes out. And even if you don't, I think we haven't talked about the biggest thing here is, what if you don't have this content yet? What if you've been the market? What if you've been the person putting out the quarterly market report and that's all you do? Well, then it's starting to think about what are the topics that we can cover that are evergreen content, and that we start thinking about evergreen as the driver with the perspective of knowing that we're going to take this and chop it up into multiple pieces, or we're going to create small pieces of content that we're going to bundle up to something bigger. So I think when you can approach your content that way and looking ahead and saying, okay, we have 4 key themes for the year, let's build content around those themes, and then break it down, build it up, bundle it up, schedule it out, and think about multiple modes and delivery for that.
Yeah, and I do I do notice this, and if I notice it, I'm sure everybody else does, because I'm just not that special, right? Timely content from your financial advisor saying, this is what we think about the markets is good. It's fine. Sometimes you just want to know, I'm curious, what does so-and-so think about this? Yeah. The stuff that sticks with me, though, is when I get an email that says, have you ever thought about what the difference between a trust and an estate plan is? I'm like, oh. So that it's like suddenly, this is a good example of some evergreen content, which is different. And it's like you want to engage with that. You want to at least read it, number one. And if inside that piece there's a call to action, or there's something for you, there's another way for you to engage, my odds of engagement are way, way, way up, as opposed to, well, in the second quarter, we think things are going to kind of do this. Right.
And I think, in your example of trust or estate plan, like the more we can even bring that down to a specific problem of like when you're a business owner preparing to exit, or when you're about to have a child, like things like that. It's like, oh, make sure I know what I have to do there. I think that makes a big difference. And I think, I think the big takeaways I want people to think about are, what's evergreen content? Am I developing evergreen content? And then how am I getting the most out of it that I can? And I think some of the other fun, I think it's fun if you when you start to accelerate and think, what else can I do with this content? You can take, and this one I've done with clients too, you can take blog content that you put together, or and turn it into a webinar, right? So turn it into, take it and turn it into slides for a webinar. And you can do this on Canva too. I don't mean to be the Canva, person. I wish I were being compensated for that, but I'm not, But I did this. We had a great long form article. We took it. It kind of had the 8 steps of something, and I keep saying 8 because I'm thinking of this particular article. And I went in to play around with Canva just to learn, and it took that and made slides for me on each point, and I was blown away. Granted, it wasn't like magical. Poof, we have a new presentation, but it synthesize the information into a presentation that we were then able to edit and change and use. And then, so you can take that, and then we took some of the content we had published the article, we had shared it on LinkedIn. We took the LinkedIn post messages and built out a landing page for registration for the webinar using some of the same content. And then as a follow-on after the webinar, we were able to design kind of a one-page download that had a summary of the information for on the same exact topic. It all came from one article that we created, and we made a webinar, we made an email engagement, we made a landing page, we had LinkedIn posts, and then we had promotion of the webinar. So it was very cool on that front. And I should say we also recorded the webinar and had it as a video then on the website. So
wow.
Yeah. If you took that even further, you could take that video and then use a tool like Opus Clip, which is a pretty cool tool that you put the video in, and then it will take clip videos from the webinar, and then you could use those in social. So you're kind of coming all the way back around.
Yeah. And so this is what you mean when you talk about achieving that 2.0 status, right? When you talk about evolving to the next level, when you talk about, reaching up from where you were, expanding and growing and becoming, achieving the next level as a financial advisor.
Yeah, this is a great example because you're starting to say, hey, these are the key themes that we know we're talking about and we're always talking about, and that they're consistently the pain points that we're delivering. And so as you develop and as you grow, you can look back across years of engaging with clients, of emails you've sent, of financial plans you've written, of webinars you've given or seminars you've given, videos you've recorded, single questions you've answered, and look at all of that in the aggregate and say, wow, we almost don't have to create anything new. We can work with everything we already have and use it to propel ourselves forward. Because you're at the stage of creating version 2.0, you've had experience, you're established, you know what you're doing, you have a good sense of what are the common solutions that you offer. And so it's a lot easier for you to reflect back and then say, okay, how is it that we can pull this content forward and bring it to life? And the tools are out there to help you. The freelancers, the skill sets, they're there. There are eager people willing and ready to help. And frankly, there's potential clients out there who are waiting to hear about it and want to know. And they need to see you in multiple venues to be able to do that. So it's pretty exciting if you think of it as just like the ultimate kind of creative endeavor, and get the right team members or technology in place, then you'll be in a good spot to move forward.
Yeah, this is really good. And I know that despite all your assurances that, they can do this themselves, there may be some people who are listening to this and thinking, maybe it'd be better if I had a conversation with Kristen about this.
Yeah, we definitely, depending on the size of the firm and the existence of content versus not, we definitely, when I talk to advisors, there's, I can enter that conversation at various points depending on where you are and what you want to create and what kind of resources you have available to invest in this. There's a lot we can do no matter what size you are to, again, get a higher return on the effort that you've put into creating or that you will put into creating content. For people who want to just kind of take a go at this and try to understand more, even like I do, I play around with the tools just so I'm aware and I can try to keep advisors up to speed on what's the latest and greatest. I highly encourage you that if you have one piece of content that you delivers, that's an evergreen piece that you think is pretty strong, whether it's a podcast episode you recorded or a blog you've written or a video or a webinar you've given, take a look at that and then use some of the tools that I've talked about today and figure out 2 or 3 or 4 other modes of delivery that you could use that content piece for, whether it's taking the transcript from a podcast and turning it into a blog post, or taking outtakes of a video and making them be shorts on Instagram, whatever it might be. Figure out how you can take that one piece of content and create 3 new uses for it. I think that will be kind of a good way to land the concepts from today and then see, wow, what did it take to do that? What kind of energy or time do I have to put into this? Who else might be able to help me? And what makes sense for moving forward? Yeah.
Well, now the name of this podcast is the Full Advisor Coaching podcast. So for those who might be listening to this thinking they might like to talk to you more about your coaching business and consulting business, how do they reach out to you? What's the best way for them to contact you?
Well, you can reach me in multiple ways. You can find me on LinkedIn at Kristin I think it's just Kristin Harad. You type my name in. You can type in full advisor coaching, or go to fulladvisorcoaching.com, click the request a call button in the upper right corner, and you can schedule time and we can talk through your game plan and see if it makes sense to get some help for it.
Sounds good. And for those of you who are listening to this podcast who are not subscribers, become a subscriber. That part's easy. Just hit the follow button. It's pretty easy. The advantage of doing that is because when you become a subscriber, you're notified automatically every time Kristen drops a new episode. So you can then go and give that one a listen. I would also ask that if you like what you hear, if you find this useful, you like this information, you find it informative, tell people about it. Share it with people you know. Word of mouth promotion is invaluable, and we would very much appreciate it. So until next time, I'm Bill Tucker on behalf of Kristen and everybody at Full Advisor Coaching. Thank you for taking the time to listen today. And please remember this, you can go out today and make today a great day or not. It's your choice. Until next time, thanks for listening.
Thank you for tuning in to Full Advisor Coaching, the podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please hit the follow button so you'll never miss an episode. To learn more about how you can become a part of the Full Advisor community, visit fulladvisorcoaching.com. Remember, stay connected and get notified as soon as brand new episodes release. Click the follow button now. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Kristin Harad or Full Advisor Coaching.